We have 3 lessons to go, and we'll finally be done with this section of divided kingdom. It feels like it's been quite the journey, I guess, going through some of these. And today we're going to look at some more of the kings, and there are 3 of them that we're going to look at specifically. And we're going to see kind of some overlap here between what's going on in these 2 kingdoms and some of the other books of the Bible as well. With some of the other prophets, with Hosea and Isaiah and Amos. And we're going to see some overlap here that kind of happens. And so we've got 3 kings we're going to look at. The first one we're going to see here is the king Uzziah, also known as Azariah. We'll call him Uzziah, though, as kind of he's mentioned of more than that. And I'll show you our dynasty chart that we've had now for quite some time. We can kind of see where we're at. I don't know when you may have to do it for me. Go ahead and flip to the first slide there. Go all the way down to, I think, the 5th one when you get to. There it is. All right, so this is the kings that we're going to be looking at today. Uzziah, which we have right here. We're going to be looking just at the kings over here in Judah. Okay, so we've got Uzziah. We have Jotham we're going to look at, and Ahaz. And I would give you the laser pointer, but it just reflects and goes back that way. I learned that in the classroom one time. I was back in the classroom with the laser pointer, and I was on a TV screen, and I was trying to show them something. I was standing in the back of the classroom, and like, all of a sudden, it was like reflecting right back into my eyes. So I can't usually really do that with a TV screen. But that's the ones we're looking at today. Uzziah, Jotham, and Ahaz. Those are 3 kings, and all 3 had some successes. Ahaz, the least of the 3 successes. We're going to see the reasons why. Ahaz was not a good person. But the other 2 had some kind of good stuff that they did. All right, so looking at specifically Judah today, and Uzziah here, also again called Azariah, he reigned in Judah while Isaiah served as the prophet. Okay, so that kind of helps you with the timeline of where we're at as far as the biblical history, the history of the Israelites. This is when Isaiah was the prophet. Hosea, Amos, Zechariah, all also prophets during this time, also God's messengers between the kings of Israel and the king of Judah. And it's noted here, it's important for us to kind of note that Uzziah's reign, began in the 27th year of Jeroboam's 2nd reign. Okay, so we can kind of see how those 2 dynasties kind of line up there. And for the most part, Uzziah was a pretty good king. All right, let's go to 2 Chronicles. And if you have opened up to 2 Kings already, keep your bookmark there, or keep something there, because we're going to go back and forth between these 2 books a lot. So 2 Chronicles, let's go to chapter 26. And let's start there by looking at verse 5. And again, talking about Uzziah here. He sought God in the days of Zechariah, who had an understanding in the visions of God. And as long as he sought the Lord, what's the last part of the verse say? God made him prosper, right? So as long as he seeks the Lord, as long as he will seek the Lord, God makes him to prosper. Now, for the most part, Uzziah was a very good ruler, much like his father. Prophet named Zechariah, as we see here. This was not the same Zechariah that wrote the Minor Prophet book in the Bible, Zechariah. But he had this other Zechariah, messenger from God, greatly influenced King Uzziah. And because of his influence, we see King Uzziah kind of following after the ways of the Lord and being the responsibilities that he had as king, seeking after God. Okay? Now, if you'll Again, we see verse 5 there, 26, as long as he's seeking after God, God will make him to prosper. Now, even though Uzziah seeks after God here, he still had some problems within his kingdom. If you go to, flip back over to 2 Kings now, and let's go to chapter 15 and look at verse 4. And we see what he allowed the people of Israel to do still. Right? 15 verse 4. Let's actually go to verse 3 first of all, to see the context of what's going on here. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. Save the high places were not removed. The people sacrificed burnt incense still on the high places. So we see that the people did not what? Adopt the same principles that Uzziah had adopted. Okay? They continue to allow them to have the idol worshiping, the worshiping false god, and pagan images, different things that were going on. In this case, were the 2 golden calves that were set up. But he allowed them to continue to worship him. All right, now let's go back over to 2 Chronicles. I'll get back and forth a lot. And we see some of the stuff that Uzziah did. All right, if you go down to, if you go to chapter 21, and then go to verses 16 and 17 with me. Not 21, it should be 26, I'm sorry. No, it's 21, I guess. Yeah, sorry. Start looking at 2 Chronicles 21, verses 16 and 17. We see that before, moreover, the Lord stirred up against Jehoram and the Philistines and the Arabians, and that were near the Ethiopians. And they came up into Judah and brake into it, and carried away all the substance that was found in the king's house, and his sons also and his wives, so that there was none sons left him, save Jehoaz, the youngest of his sons. So a couple of chapters ago we saw this, right? The Lord allowed the Philistines and the Amorites and the Egyptians and all these people to kind of come in and really cause a whole lot of problems for the people of Judah. Okay? He allowed them to chastise them. God used them to punish the Jews for their wickedness. Fast forward a couple of years and a couple of chapters over to chapter 26 in 2 Chronicles. We see that God then uses Uzziah here in chapter 26 verse 7 to chastise the Philistines for their wickedness against the Judites. Alright, so and God helped him, 26 verse 7, against the Philistines and against the Arabians that dwelt in Baal and the Mehunims. Okay, so we see God using Uzziah to punish the Philistines for their wickedness. And because of Uzziah's success in battle, because of his prowess and his being a very good army general, and the tactics and stuff that he used, of course, under the direction of God, the Ammonites who lived northeast of Judah brought Uzziah a tribute and kind of a peace offering, and Uzziah's fame and his success spread as far as Egypt. All right? All the nations and the different people that were around him, all the way down to Egypt, the success of what he was able to do spread. Okay? If you look at verse 26 and verse 7, again, God helped him against all of these different people. So we see that the source of Uzziah's victory was because of his seeking after God. Alright, go back over to 2 Kings with me, and this time go to chapter 14 and look at verse 22. We're going to see some of the stuff that Uzziah did with his successful winnings of the wars. He built back in verse 22 Elath and restored it to Judah after that the king slept with his father. Okay, so we see that he rebuilt Elath, and what Elath was an important harbor, okay, for the nation of Judah. So they got a lot of goods, had a lot of trade. It was very much a big success of their wealth, or a big source of their income was the harbor there at Elath. And because of his victories, God allowed him to build that back. Okay, again, seeking after the Lord, and in that seeking after the Lord, he's being very prosperous because of it. Okay, back to 2 Chronicles now, back to chapter 26. Let's read verses 9 down through 15. Moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem, at the corner gate and at the valley gate, and turning of the wall, and he fortified them. Also he built towers in the desert and digged many wells, for he had much cattle, both in the low country and in the plains. Husbandmen also and vine dressers in the mountains in Carmel, for he loved husbandry. Moreover, Uzziah had a host of fighting men that went out to war by bands, according to the number of their account, by the hand of Jeiel, the scribe, and Masai, the ruler, under the hand of Hananiah, one of the king's captains. The whole number of the chief of the fathers of the mighty men of valor were 2,600. And under their hand was an army 300,000 and 7,500 that made war with mighty people to help the king against the enemy. And Uzziah prepared for them throughout all of the host shields and spears and helmets and harpagions. Pastor Rob, what is that?
Harpagions.
What is a harpagon?
Like the spear.
Okay, all right, harpagions and bows and slings to cast stones. And he made in Jerusalem engines invented by cunning men to be on the towers and upon the bulwarks to shoot arrows and great stones withal. And his name spread far abroad, for he was marvelously helped till he was strong. Now, just looking at those 6 or 7 verses there, we see King Uzziah being able to do what? What was King Uzziah good at? Battle and what else? What was he skilled in? Not just battle, but a whole host of things, right? We see there a whole host of things that he was very, very good at. Metallurgy, making up the spears and the swords and stuff. Weaponry, making bows. He was good at farming. We see some of the vineyards and stuff that he'd come up with. He was good at construction. We see him building these different walls and different towers and different gates. He's good at husbandry and farming and all these things. So he has a load of skills, lots and lots of skills that he would get. Uzziah was Uzziah was highly intelligent. Okay, almost probably maybe by today's standards would probably be considered a genius. He would have been along the lines of Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers. He was good in a whole bunch of stuff. He was a good etymologist. He was a good botanist. He was a good scientist. He was a doctor. He has a medical background. Obviously, a very good writer. Very good in philosophy. So very, very similar to kind of a Thomas Jefferson. Very, very good at what he did and was good at a lot of things. He excelled in many different disciplines because God had blessed him and allowed him to become successful because he was following after God. Therefore, God allowed him to be successful in a bunch of these things. Okay? If you go back to verse 15 with me, please, in 2 Chronicles 26. Excuse me. And we see, as we read through this verse, look at the description that was given of the help that Uzziah received from God. And he made in Jerusalem engines invented by cunning men to be on the towers and upon the bulwarks to shoot arrows and great stones withal. And his name spread far abroad, for he was what? Marvelously helped. And who was helping him marvelously? God was, right? Till he was strong. So we see here he's actually making essentially huge crossbows that had engines attached to them that was allowing him to be able to put them up on the bulwarks and on towers and kind of shoot these great stones and shoot arrows out. Catapults, kind of what this is, and these big, huge, you've seen the movie, the big, huge crossbows. I was reading actually a couple different commentaries on what Uzziah was able to do, and this was just the opinion of a couple of men, but our Gatling gun that I think we developed in the 30s, I think, maybe before that, kind of like the crank gun that shoots the, you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about a Gatling gun. That design, if you kind of was taken from some of the stuff that King Uzziah was doing with his arrows. He had developed kind of a way, there was a man-powered crank. One guy would pull it back and kind of was pretty cunning and pretty intelligent. What he was able to do, kind of some of the stuff he had. But that was the premise that John or George Gatlin, I think, got that kind of idea from. So we see a very intelligent man, and this was coming directly from the fact that he was seeking after the Lord. Okay? So, there's the expansion of Judah when King Uzziah is there, again because of stuff he was able to do. Rise of Uzziah, but as this vicious circle always goes, right? And we see the fall of Uzziah as well. Now, he was famous both far and near in the ancient world. Everything that he did was done very well. And it was done to a point so well that it probably was and would have been easy for Uzziah to begin to think that his own intelligence, his own ability was kind of allowed him to be as successful as he was. Okay? Look at verse 16 of chapter 26 there in 2 Chronicles. But when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction. For he transgressed against the Lord his God, and went into the temple of the Lord to burn incense upon the altar. So Uzziah became filled with pride. As we know, pride fills us, pride comes before destruction, comes before the fall. And because of the pride that he built up, he thought that he was able to go into the temple and burn incense upon the altar of incense. Now, we don't have time, but over in Numbers chapter 16, verses 39 and 40 specifically, God forbids anybody except for the high priest, right, from burning incense on the altar of incense. Uzziah here thinks that he has the ability to do that. So he goes in and burns incense there. Okay? Uzziah wanted what God said that he couldn't have. Although God had given him and blessed him with a boatload of things, right, and intelligence and abilities, he still wanted what God said that he could not have. He wanted a place in the priesthood. Right? He wanted a place as the same as the high priest. Imagine what being both king and the high priest would have done for Uzziah's, confidence or his pride. Okay? The people of the time would have viewed him as both king and high priest extremely special. Since God specifically would have had to have set aside some of the laws to accommodate Uzziah being the high priest and the king. The king, in essence, here is testing God. Is giving God a test. Would God think Uzziah was special enough to get away with breaking his law? Let's go to verse 17 and 18. And Azariah the priest went in after him, and with him 80 priests of the Lord that were valiant men. And they withstood Uzziah the king, and said unto him, It appertaineth not unto thee, Uzziah, to burn incense unto the Lord, but to the priests, the sons of Aaron, that are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for thou hast trespassed, neither shall it be for thine honor from the Lord God. Okay, so how would you expect here Uzziah, a man full of pride, a man full of, boasting and kind of walking around with his chest stuck out, how would you think he was going to respond to the rebuking here from the priest Azariah? Probably not good, right? He's going to probably rebuke him to anger. It's going to make him very, very upset. And we see that in verses 19 and 20. Uzziah here reveals the pride that he has built up in his heart. Then Uzziah was wroth and had a censer in his hand to burn the incense. And while he was wroth with the priest, the leprosy even rose up in his forehead before the priest in the house of the Lord from beside him in the incense altar. And Azariah, the chief priest, and all the priests looked upon him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead, and they thrust him out thence, yea, himself hasted also to go. People wanted to have him killed. And as the anger builds up, okay, and this is how I envision this, and probably not how it happened. But old cartoons, right? It was the Bugs Bunny or somebody would get mad, and they would start their feet, right? And it would just kind of build the anger would get really red in their cheeks. I see Uzziah clenching up, right? And getting madder and madder, and everything clenching. His cheeks getting really, really red. And you think that his head's about to pop off with smoke, like it happened. But instead of his head popping off with smoke for anger, what pops off on his head? Starts here in his forehead with leprosy. Right? So he is experiencing leprosy that is just essentially coming out of nowhere because of his sin against God, because of him thinking that he was greater than God. So he had leprosy, which of course we know at this time leprosy was a death sentence. Right? He was going to be ostracized, he was going to be put up by himself because it was highly contagious, and it was an incurable, disfiguring skin disease. Verse 21, and Uzziah the king was a leper until the day of his death, and dwelt in a several house, being a leper, for he was cut off from the house of the Lord, and Jotham his son was over the king's house, judging the people of the land. Why do you think God chose leprosy in dealing with Uzziah's problem?
So people see judgments on what having to turn away from the Lord.
Exactly, right? So this is a guy who was a very powerful king, who would have been known, as we saw, throughout the land, right? He was a rock star, he was a celebrity, people would have known who Uzziah was. And now Uzziah has gone from being noticed everywhere and revered as this great, powerful king that did all these wonderful things in front of all these people. Now he's being, what? Secluded by himself, right? Or amongst other lepers. So we see destroying his appearance and secluding him from people kept him from doing the things that gave him pride. Okay, so we see that's kind of the reason there. Uzziah looked to himself for success rather than looking to God. Proverbs 16:18, Proverbs 29:23 both tell us that what always goes before the fall? Pride. 100% of the time, pride goes before the fall. In the year that Uzziah died, the prophet Isaiah had a great vision of the glory of God and the waywardness of his people. Now let's go over to Isaiah chapter 6. And let's look at verse 1. And in the year that King Uzziah died, this is Isaiah, of course, speaking, I saw also the Lord sitting upon the throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Okay, so at this point now, King Uzziah has died. What is the status in Israel and Judah been for the last several years? As far as for people who followed after God, what's the status been for the two countries? Not great, right? This has been a history now, many years. We can go back and see exactly. There's been a lot of people, a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of kings not following after God. Even Isaiah, who is older now, would have seen this happening in these two nations for quite some time. He would have been experiencing these kings deliberately doing pagan things, deliberately doing things that God did not want them to do. After Uzziah dies, Isaiah has this dream or has this vision in which he sees the Lord sitting up on the throne, high and lifted up, and his train filling the temple. Here is another instance of God giving Isaiah this image of him keeping the light on in the nation of Israel. Okay, and keeping the light on among the Israelites. This is just another way that we see Isaiah giving this vision of glory and the waywardness of his people and God kind of making sure Isaiah the prophet, because we know the importance of Isaiah. We know he does a lot of big things and writes a lot of important things in the Old Testament. We see that kind of happening in the presence of or after Uzziah passed away. Okay, so that is the first king we have here. If I get to the second one, which is Jotham. There we go. Okay, Jotham is the next one to rule here in Judah as well. This is in 2 Chronicles chapter 27, and I'm not going to get to the third king, but I'm going to try to get through Jotham today. All right, so the record of the reign of Uzziah's son. This is his son Jotham. It's a pretty brief one. In both Kings and Chronicles, there's not a whole bunch of stuff written about Jotham, but he apparently was the administrator. He was the kind of the guy in charge as his father went off to die as a leper. Okay, we can see that over in 2 Kings 15:5. He became king in his own right, and he had a 16-year reign. And if you look at verse 2 of chapter 27, we see kind of the overall theme here of his reign. and he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Uzziah did. Howbeit, he entered not into the temple of the Lord, and the people did get corrupted. Okay, so we see the reign of Jotham here. During his 16-year reign, he was careful to do what was right in the sight of the Lord. Now, what other thing do we see there in verse 2? Really important difference that Jotham had from his father Uzziah. What did he not do? Yeah, he didn't go try to burn any incense, right? He saw his dad turn to a leopard on the spot and decided, I don't want any part of that. So he does not go in and try to offer up any incense. Now, under Jotham, we also see that the people continued here to worship, practice the worshiping in high places. The state of Judah itself, at this time, if you go to Isaiah and read the first 5 chapters, all the stuff of Isaiah right there, that's the state of Judah at the time. Also the book of Micah. Okay, we don't have time to go over and look at all those things, but that's the correlation here, kind of what's going on. We're kind of going to reference some of the bad things that are happening in Judah. We're looking at the first 5 chapters of Isaiah and the book of Micah as well. But even in the midst of all that, we see that Jotham served the Lord. Okay? Verse 3, he built a high gate at the house of the Lord, and on the wall of Ophel he built much. So, like his predecessors here, Jotham engaged in a whole bunch of building projects. And the building projects included a beautification of the temple during his time. He rebuilt the high gate that we saw there, which the high gate gave greater access to the temple as well to the people. He rebuilt. He also did some extensive work on the wall of Ophel there, which the wall of Ophel was the southern wall of fortification, and that was there as part of the Temple Mount. He also had capital improvements. He built cities up in the mountains of Judah, known as the hill country. He built castle forts and towers for the security off in the forest. Look at verse 4. Moreover, he built cities in the mountains of Judah, and in the forest he built castles and towers. Okay? Jotham was known for his building. He was also renowned for his winning a war against the Ammonites. All right? After that, which he extracted a tribute from them, just like his father had done. Look at verse 5. He fought also with the king of the Ammonites and rebelled against them, and the children of Ammon gave him the same year 100 talents of silver, 10,000 measures of wheat, 10,000 of barley, so much that the children of Ammon paid unto him both the second year and the third. Now, 100 talents of silver, okay, we see that he got 100 talents of silver. That is the equivalent, okay, to 3.2 tons. All right, so that would be over 6,000 pounds of silver that they gave him. It's a lot of silver. It's a lot, worth a whole lot of money. And that was the tribute they paid to him because of his winning. Right, so we had a huge quantity of silver and wheat and barley. All right, verse 6. So Jotham became mighty because he prepared his ways what? We see this again, right? I think that's always here, and it's written in Scriptures, I believe, for a specific purpose. Right? The writer of the Second Chronicles, God wanted us to see that as long as these people were following after him, he was allowing them to be prosperous. All right? So he became mighty because he prepared his ways before the Lord. Let's jump down into verse 7. Now the rest of his acts of Jotham and all of his wars and his ways are written in the book of Kings over Israel and Judah. He was 25 years when he began to reign, and 16 years. And Jotham slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Ahaz his son reigned in his stead. So as seen by his faithfulness, or being a faithful king, Jotham responded well to seeing God judge his father. He saw the mistakes of his father's ways, didn't follow after them. Watching his father slowly die, I'm sure, had to have been a traumatic experience, yet he learned to fear God and turn to him for success. Now, this is an interesting fact about King Jotham. I didn't know this, maybe you didn't either. He is one of the few characters in all of Scriptures whom absolutely nothing bad is written about. There's no evil written about King Jotham. And there's not a whole lot of people in Scriptures that can say that. Okay? In the final years of his reign, the tribute ceased, and the calamities of the northern kingdom were about to fall down to Judah. The Lord began to send against Judah Rezin, the king of Syria, and called the son of Remaliah. That would be a Syro-Israelite league that included the Edomites and the Philistines. Go to 2 Kings, let's finish up here. Back to 2 Kings chapter 15, verse 37. And in those days, the Lord began to send against Judah Rezin, the king of Syria, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and Jotham stood up with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Ahaz, his son, reigned in his stead. So we see this Syro-Israelite with the Edomites and the Philistines, a coalition of these different nations and these warring nations that came against Judah. Okay, Jotham was able to keep these forces, these marauding forces, at bay while he was alive. As we'll see starting next week, though, his son took over instead. Ahaz experienced the full wrath of Ahaz. Okay, and just to show you, Jotham obviously did some good things, was able to keep them at bay, and he learned by the mistakes of his father. Ahaz, on the other hand, the reign of Ahaz in Judah, and the very first thing we're going to look at is that he turned straight to Baal. And because he turned straight to Baal, he feels the full effect of these forces coming in, and some of the stuff that happens to him because of that, honestly, is not great. Okay? Ahaz, much like Ahab. And we see a lot of similarity between the way they reign and kind of stuff that happened to them as well. Okay? So we'll finish up with the reign of King Ahaz next week. All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the lesson that we have today, for being